The dust cloud billowed across the Wyoming Territory horizon as Delilah Whitaker clutched the worn edges of her wedding dress, the once pristine white fabric now speckled with the earth of 1,000 miles. It was 1876, and she had traveled from Boston to Sweetwater Springs with nothing but hope in her heart and a promise in her pocket, a letter from a man she'd never met, but had agreed to marry. The stagecoach lurched to a halt outside the town's only hotel, a 3-story wooden building that had seen better days. Delilah gathered her courage along with her single trunk of possessions. At 23, she had left everything familiar behind, answering an advertisement for a mail-order bride after her parents' passing left her with few options in Boston. "Last stop, Sweetwater Springs," the driver announced, helping her down. "Watch your step, miss." Delilah's boots touched the dusty street, and she immediately felt the stares. Women in practical dresses and men in work clothes paused to observe the newcomer in her travel-worn wedding gown. "Is that supposed to be a bride?" a woman whispered loudly enough for Delilah to hear. "Looks like she rolled here instead of rode," another replied with a snicker. Delilah's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin. The dress had been her mother's, and wearing it for her arrival had seemed proper at the time. Now, as the whispers continued, she questioned her decision. "Your intended is waiting inside, miss," the driver said, nodding toward the hotel. Clutching her small reticule, Delilah stepped onto the wooden boardwalk. The hotel door swung open, and a portly man in his 50s emerged, his eyes scanning her with obvious disappointment. "Miss Whitaker?" he asked, his voice strained. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell, I'm pleased to finally—" "You don't look like your daguerreotype," he interrupted, frowning. "And what happened to your dress? I paid good money to bring you out here. Expected something finer." The small crowd that had gathered snickered. Delilah felt her throat tighten. "The journey was difficult," she began, but Mr. Caldwell waved his hand dismissively. "I need a wife who understands appearances matter in my business. I can't have the banker's wife laughing at mine." He turned to the onlookers. "Deal's off." "Anyone want a dusty bride, slightly used?" More laughter erupted as tears threatened to spill from Delilah's eyes. She had spent nearly everything to get here and now stood humiliated, abandoned, and nearly penniless in a strange town. "That's enough, Caldwell." The deep voice cut through the laughter like a knife. The crowd parted, revealing a tall man leaning against a hitching post. His dark hat shadowed his face, but Delilah could see piercing blue eyes beneath the brim. A star glinted on his vest, the town marshal. "A man's word used to mean something in these parts," the marshal continued, straightening to his full height. "You sent for this lady, you made her a promise." "Look at her, Garrett," Caldwell protested. "That ain't what I ordered." The Marshal Garrett stepped forward, and Delilah could see him clearly now. He was younger than she expected for a lawman, perhaps 30, with a weathered face that spoke of hard years under the western sun. His eyes, though, held something gentle when they met hers. "Miss," he said, tipping his hat, "don't mind these folks. They've forgotten their manners," Caldwell scoffed. "I ain't marrying damaged goods. Look at that dress covered in trail dust and wrinkled beyond saving." The marshal's expression hardened as he turned back to Caldwell. "It's a dress of gold to me. Shows a woman who'd cross a continent to honor her word, unlike some men I could name." A hush fell over the crowd as Marshal Garrett extended his arm to Delilah. "Miss Whitaker, I believe I'm Ethan Garrett. Let me help you find proper accommodations while you consider your options." Delilah hesitated, but with few alternatives, accepted his arm. "Thank you, Marshal Garrett. Just Ethan," he corrected quietly. "And it seems to me Sweetwater Springs just got a whole lot better with your arrival." As he escorted her into the hotel, Delilah felt the weight of stares on her back, but also the steady strength of the marshal beside her. In that moment, she wasn't certain of anything in her future except that this was not how she had imagined her arrival in Wyoming Territory. "Mrs. Reynolds," Ethan called to a severe-looking woman behind the hotel desk. "This lady needs a room for the night. Put it on my account." That's not necessary, Delilah protested. Consider it Sweetwater Springs' apology for that poor welcome, he insisted. Besides, I've got questions about what exactly Caldwell promised you. Might be legal matters to sort. Mrs. Reynolds eyed Delilah's dusty dress with raised eyebrows but handed over a key. Room 204 up the stairs. Supper's at 6 if you want it. Thank you. Delilah took the key, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. Rest, Ethan advised. I'll come by tomorrow morning if that's acceptable. We can discuss your situation then. Delilah nodded gratefully, and when she finally closed the door to her room, she allowed the tears to fall. She had gambled everything on this new beginning, and within minutes of arrival, it had crumbled. As she carefully removed the wedding dress, her mother's treasured heirloom, she wondered if she'd made the greatest mistake of her life. Morning brought clarity and determination. Delilah washed with the cold water from the pitcher, donned her one other dress, a practical blue calico, and braided her chestnut hair. She wouldn't let yesterday's humiliation define her time in Sweetwater Springs. She had come west for a new life, and one way or another, she would forge one. A knock came at her door precisely at 9 o'clock. Ethan Garrett stood there, hat in hand, looking somehow different out of the direct sun, younger perhaps, or simply less intimidating. Good morning, Miss Whitaker. I hope you rested well. As well as could be expected, Marshal. Thank you for your kindness yesterday, he nodded. I've spoken with Caldwell. He's sticking to his decision, unfortunately, but he has agreed to reimburse your travel expenses. Relief washed over Delilah. With that money, she could at least make it to another town, perhaps find work. That's fair, she managed. Fair would be honoring his commitment, Ethan said with a frown, but it's something. Have you considered what you'll do now? I have some skills. I can sew quite well, and I've taught children in Boston. Perhaps there's need for such work here. Ethan's expression brightened. As it happens, Sweetwater Springs has been looking for a schoolteacher. The last one left to get married 3 months ago. Would you be interested in meeting with the town council? For the first time since arriving, Delilah felt a flicker of hope. I would be most grateful for the opportunity. Excellent. The council meets this afternoon. In the meantime, would you allow me to show you around town, properly this time without the unwelcoming committee? Despite herself, Delilah smiled. I would like that very much. Sweetwater Springs revealed itself to be a growing frontier town with surprising amenities: a general store, a small lending library, a church, and even a photography studio. As Ethan guided her through the streets, Delilah noticed how people deferred to him with respect, yet there was genuine warmth in their greetings. You're well regarded here, she observed. Ethan shrugged. Been marshal for 5 years now. Folks know I do my best by them. How does someone so young become a marshal? She asked, then blushed at her forwardness. He didn't seem to mind. Was a scout for the army after the war, then deputy in Cheyenne. When Sweetwater needed someone who knew the territory and could handle trouble, I fit the bill. At the general store, the proprietor, a friendly woman named Martha, greeted Delilah warmly. So you're the lady who put Harold Caldwell in his place. Good for you. That man needs taking down a peg or 3. I didn't exactly, Delilah began. Word travels fast here, Ethan explained. By now, the story's probably that you told Caldwell exactly where he could put his proposal and rode off on my horse. Martha laughed. Not quite that dramatic, but close. Miss Whitaker, if you're staying in town, you're welcome here anytime. The afternoon council meeting went better than Delilah could have hoped. The 5 council members, including Martha from the general store, were eager to fill the teaching position before the fall term began. Your credentials are impressive, Judge Wilson, the head of the council, acknowledged. Harvard education isn't something we see every day in Wyoming territory. My father was a professor there, Delilah explained. He believed daughters deserved education equal to sons. Progressive thinking, the judge noted, and welcome. We've got 37 children of school age in this town and surrounding ranches. Can you handle that many? In Boston, I assisted with classes twice that size, she assured him. An hour later, Delilah emerged from the town hall as Sweetwater Springs' new schoolteacher, with a small salary and living quarters in the rooms above the schoolhouse. "Congratulations, Miss Whitaker," Ethan said, waiting outside. "I'd say this calls for celebration." "Would you do me the honor of having supper at the hotel restaurant tonight?" Delilah hesitated. "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose further." "No imposition," he insisted. "Consider it welcoming our new schoolteacher properly." That evening, sitting across from Ethan in the surprisingly elegant hotel restaurant, Delilah found herself relaxing for the first time in months. The marshal was easy to talk to, asking thoughtful questions about her life in Boston and sharing stories of the territory. "How did you come to answer Caldwell's advertisement?" he asked as they finished their meal. Delilah traced the rim of her water glass. "My parents died last winter influenza. With no other family, my options were limited. I could have become a companion to some elderly lady or perhaps found a position in a shop, but..." She paused. "I wanted more than just survival. Mr. Caldwell's letters painted a picture of partnership, of building something together." "I'm sorry about your parents," Ethan said gently. And sorrier still that Caldwell didn't recognize what was standing in front of him. Their eyes met, and Delilah felt a strange flutter in her chest. Perhaps it was Providence. "Teaching suits me better than being Mrs. Caldwell." "Providence indeed," Ethan agreed with a smile. The next few weeks passed in a blur as Delilah settled into her new home above the schoolhouse and prepared for the coming term. The residents of Sweetwater Springs, having gotten past their first impressions, proved to be welcoming and helpful. Martha supplied fabric for curtains, the blacksmith's wife donated books, and Ethan seemed to find reasons to stop by almost daily. Sometimes he brought building supplies to fix a loose board or a leaking roof. Other days he arrived with wildflowers or news from town. Their conversations grew longer, more personal, and Delilah found herself looking forward to his visits with an eagerness that both thrilled and frightened her. One Saturday, 3 weeks after her arrival, Ethan appeared at her door with a wooden crate. "What's this?" Delilah asked, wiping flour from her hands as she'd been baking bread. "Open it and see," he suggested, a mysterious smile playing at his lips. Inside the crate, nestled in straw, she found glass jars of colorful powders and liquids. "Paint," she breathed. "For the schoolroom," Ethan nodded. "Ordered it from Denver, thought it might brighten the place up before your students arrive." Delilah was speechless at his thoughtfulness. "Ethan, this must have cost worth every penny to see that smile," he interrupted, then cleared his throat. "Besides, education needs proper tools." They spent the weekend painting the schoolroom together, the walls a cheerful yellow, the trim a dignified brown. Between brushstrokes, they shared stories and laughter, and when their hands occasionally touched, neither pulled away too quickly. By Sunday evening, as they stood admiring their work, Delilah realized something had shifted between them. This was no longer just the town marshal helping the new schoolteacher. This was a man and a woman standing at the edge of something new and fragile. "It's beautiful," she said, looking at the transformed room. "Yes," Ethan agreed, though his eyes were on her, not the walls. "Delilah, I was wondering if you might..." A pounding at the door interrupted him. Marshal Garrett." Ethan's expression instantly changed as he strode to the door. Outside stood a ranch hand, breathless and panicked. "Rustlers hit the Carter place, took half the herd and shot Mr. Carter. He's alive but bad hurt." "I'll get my horse," Ethan said, already moving. He turned back to Delilah. "I'm sorry, go," she urged. "Be careful." For 3 days there was no word from Ethan. Delilah threw herself into preparations for school, trying not to worry, but each hour stretched her nerves thinner. On the 4th morning, as she was writing out lesson plans, hoofbeats approached the schoolhouse. She rushed outside to see Ethan dismounting, his clothes dusty and his face showing exhaustion but otherwise unharmed. "You're back," she breathed, not bothering to hide her relief. "Caught the rustlers at the territorial border," he explained. "Carter will recover." "I'm sorry I couldn't send word. You're here now, that's what matters. His tired eyes softened. Is it? Do I matter to you, Delilah? The directness of his question caught her off guard, but in that moment, with the fear of the past days still fresh, honesty came easily. Yes. More than I expected anyone could matter again. Something like wonder crossed his face. When I was tracking those rustlers, all I could think about was getting back to you, not to the town, to you. He took a step closer. I know it's soon, too soon, maybe. But I've never been one to waste time when something important comes along. Delilah's heart pounded. And what has come along, Marshal Garrett? A chance. A beginning, if you're willing. Before she could respond, the school bell rang the signal for the town council meeting she was expected to attend. I have to go, she said reluctantly. I'll be here, he promised. We'll finish this conversation. The council meeting dragged interminably as Judge Wilson discussed fall tax assessments. When they finally adjourned, Delilah hurried back to the schoolhouse, where Ethan waited on the porch, freshly bathed and changed. I thought we might walk by the creek, he suggested. It's cooler there. The path to the creek led through a stand of cottonwoods that provided welcome shade from the August sun. They walked in companionable silence until reaching a bend where the water pooled calm and clear. I come here to think sometimes, Ethan said, guiding her to a fallen log that served as a natural bench. It reminds me why I stay in one place now instead of wandering like I used to. What changed? Delilah asked. He considered this. Realized a man needs roots to grow. Purpose beyond just surviving the next day. He turned to face her. I was content with my life here. Then you stepped off that stagecoach in that dust-covered wedding dress and suddenly content wasn't enough anymore. Delilah's breath caught. Ethan, let me finish, he said gently. I know you came here expecting to be a bride, then had to change course. I know you're still finding your footing. I don't want to rush you, but I also want to be clear about my intentions. He took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. I'm falling in love with you, Delilah Whitaker. I think maybe I started falling the moment I saw you standing up to all those gawking folks, holding your head high despite everything. Tears pricked at Delilah's eyes. I came west to marry a stranger I never expected. Never hoped that I might find someone who sees me, truly sees me. Is that a good thing? He asked, uncertainty flickering across his face. In answer, Delilah leaned forward and pressed her lips to his a gentle, questioning kiss that he returned with equal tenderness. When they parted, his eyes remained closed for a moment, as if memorizing the feeling. I'll take that as a yes, he murmured. It's a yes, she confirmed with a smile. As summer yielded to fall, Delilah found her rhythm as Sweetwater Springs teacher, while her relationship with Ethan blossomed. They took Sunday walks, shared meals, and slowly built something neither had expected to find. The children adored their new teacher, though some parents initially questioned her modern teaching methods. When little Tommy Jenkins, who had never shown interest in learning, suddenly became passionate about arithmetic after Delilah incorporated practical problems involving cattle counting, even the skeptics were won over. Ethan took pride in watching Delilah transform the school and, by extension, the town. For her part, Delilah found herself watching the clock on days when Ethan was due to return from his patrols, a feeling both foreign and exhilarating. One October evening, as golden leaves drifted past the schoolhouse windows, Ethan arrived with a small package wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" Delilah asked, setting aside the essays she'd been grading. "Something I've been meaning to give you for a while," he said, suddenly looking nervous. She unwrapped the package to reveal a beautifully crafted wooden box. Inside lay her mother's wedding dress, but transformed. The dust had been carefully cleaned away, tears mended with nearly invisible stitches and delicate embroidery added around the hem. "Martha helped," Ethan explained quickly. "I didn't want to presume, but I thought. That is, I hoped." "It's beautiful," Delilah whispered, touching the fabric reverently. "But how did you get it? You left it at the hotel that first day. Mrs. Reynolds kept it safe, waiting for you to claim it. When you didn't, I asked if I could take it." Delilah looked up at him, understanding dawning. "Ethan Garrett, are you asking me something?" He dropped to one knee, taking her hand. "That day you arrived, when Caldwell and the others mocked your dress, I meant what I said. To me, it was a dress of gold because it brought you here, to this town, to me." He reached into his pocket and produced a simple gold band. "I'm not a rich man, Delilah. I can't offer grand houses or fancy things, but I can promise to cherish you every day for the rest of our lives. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Delilah's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes. Yes, Ethan." The wedding took place on Thanksgiving Day in the town church, with what seemed like all of Sweetwater Springs in attendance. Delilah wore her mother's dress, now restored to glory and sparkling in the candlelight. Ethan stood tall in a new suit, his eyes never leaving his bride as she walked down the aisle. "Never seen the marshal smile so much," Martha whispered to Judge Wilson. "And to think it all started with that dusty dress and his stubborn sense of justice." "Providence," the judge agreed. "Some things are just meant to be." As Delilah and Ethan exchanged vows, the wind kicked up outside, sending another cloud of Wyoming dust swirling past the church windows. Neither of them noticed they were too busy beginning the future they'd found in each other's eyes. 5 years later, the schoolhouse had expanded to 2 rooms, with Delilah still teaching the older children while her assistant, Miss Cooper, handled the younger ones. The marshal's office had also grown, with Ethan training a deputy to help manage the increasingly busy town. Their home, a comfortable 2-story house on the edge of Sweetwater Springs, rang with the laughter of their 3-year-old daughter Emma and 1-year-old son James. On the wall of their parlor hung a framed piece of fabric, a small square cut from Delilah's wedding dress, before the rest was carefully packed away for Emma's future. "A reminder," Ethan had said when he presented the framed keepsake on their first anniversary, "that the most precious gold isn't found in mines, but in journeys that bring us where we're meant to be." On a warm spring evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains with fire, Delilah leaned against her husband's shoulder. "You remember what you asked me that day by the creek," she mused. "Whether it was a good thing that you saw me, truly saw me." Ethan smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "I remember. I didn't fully understand then what a gift that was," she continued, "to be seen for exactly who you are, dust and all, and loved not in spite of it, but because of it." From inside came Emma's call for her bedtime story, followed by James's babbling agreement. "Duty calls, Mrs. Garrett," Ethan said, pressing a kiss to her temple. Delilah smiled, thinking of the dusty, frightened bride who had stepped off the stagecoach 5 years ago, and the life she'd found instead of the one she'd expected. "A life of gold," she murmured, taking her husband's hand as they went inside to their children. In the years that followed, Sweetwater Springs continued to grow, as did the Garrett family. Ethan eventually hung up his marshal's star to serve as the town's mayor, while Delilah became headmistress of what was now a proper school with 4 teachers. Their children grew strong and kind under the Wyoming sky, learning the values their parents treasured, seeing the worth in others, keeping your word, and recognizing that sometimes life's most precious gifts arrive covered in dust, waiting for someone with the wisdom to see the gold beneath. And on special occasions, Delilah would take out her preserved wedding dress, showing her daughters and eventually her granddaughters the careful stitching that had mended its tears, the embroidery that had transformed it, and the story of how a dress mocked by some but treasured by one good man had changed the course of her life. "It wasn't really about the dress, you see," she would tell them. "It was about finding someone who looks at you and sees not what others see, but what truly matters." It became a family legend, the tale of the bride with dust on her dress, and the cowboy marshal who saw beyond it to the woman beneath. A story of true gold found where least expected, in a small Wyoming town where 2 hearts recognized each other across a dusty street and never looked back.